I think we can win even when our opponents show up. All right, that's something I truly believe. I think our ideas are better. I think we're smarter than them. I think we're better at rhetoric than them. I think we're hotter than them. And all we have to do is show up, study our shit, and we will win. We can like win in this battle of ideas. Of course, it's a way more complicated than that, but so what? We can figure it out.
This will be, I think, the 42nd episode, and I want to welcome everybody from a diverse set of political perspectives and places all across, I believe, just the United States and Canada. Kevin being the Canuck, the dirty Canadian that we've brought on the platform today. And we're going to talk about a host of topics. Most of everybody here knows the rules already, but I will repeat them. Nothing against terms of service. We would all like to keep our jobs. If I'm talking at any point, everybody else stops talking. I'm not going to give my opinion. I'm just trying to moderate. I'm going to be pretty strict with moderation. We're going to have intros and outros for every topic. That'll be about a minute long. During those time periods, you do not talk over other people. That's so everybody has to make a clear statement uninterrupted. We'll have an open period in the middle. Also, if there's any point during this conversation where you feel like you cannot get in for it, let's say you're just not great with panels, raise your hand, I'll write your name down, and eventually I'll try to get the conversation over to you. But do know that it will take some time, as I do want a natural flow of conversation to happen. That's basically all the rules and regulations. So let's get into introductions. We're going to start, as always, in the top left-hand corner with Demon Machine, who's currently being very, very masculine, very man, and mechanicking. How's it going, Demon?
Fine. I am changing some tires, but happy to be here, and let's get some discussion on.
Wonderful. We'll move on to Fabian Liberty.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm the little guy here. Again, let's have fun. We'll see what happens between everyone tonight. I'm an anarcho-capitalist duo streamer. I usually do the debates. My stream partner usually sticks to the channel itself and do a bunch of fun stuff. I don't know. We like to do a lot of boycott Blizzard streams, some gaming stuff, some news, some podcast stuff.
Happy to hear it. Now I'm going to throw it over to Infrared.
What's good? I'm Infrared, Marxist Leninism in the age of multipolarity and the post-COVID world. Not much else to say.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Jangles.
What's up, everybody? My name is Justin. I'm some nerd with a YouTube channel called Jangles Science Lab. I do videos and debates.
Wonderful. Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I'm Joe Lewis. You can follow me if you show interest, twitch.tv/Joe Lewis, the O being 0. And I'm happy to be here. Came in a little last minute, but we'll see how it goes. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. Throwing it over to Kevin Castley.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. Thanks to you and Danabo for inviting me here tonight. It's great to be here. I'm Kevin Castley. I run the channel Superpower Broadcasting. I stream every day over to Twitch at Superpower Broadcasting. You can also find me on Twitter at Kevin Castley. And our YouTube channel right now, currently pending some frivolous copyright claims, is down, but that should be back up at some point in the near future. In the meantime, you can find me over on Twitch. Thank you.
Wow, the war hawked has been had a war done upon them, and we're throwing it over to Xanderhal.
Pretty much by other hawks too, former partners. It's pretty ridiculous. So,
yeah. Would have thought that a bunch of war hawks would use aggressive tactics. I'm gonna throw it over to Xanderhal.
Yeah, my name's Xanderhal. I do left-wing political content on Twitch and on YouTube, and I also play a shit ton of Rust, and that's pretty much all you need to know.
Wonderful. And now we're going to throw it over to CounterPoints.
Yeah, hi, my name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named CounterPoints. I identify as centrist or center-right. I just made a video for an hour yelling at my audience, but I think the topics tonight are spicy enough that we'll probably get some yelling in tonight anyways. So looking forward to it. Should be fun. Let's do it.
Wonderful. I have one personal question. Haz, what's that stick? I see you with that stick constantly. What is that?
It's an African walking stick. It was granted to me by a Zulu prince, made from rare form of black elephant ivory. Yeah, it's like also enchanted with magical powers to make my opponents confused.
Wow. We're going to see some interesting tactics today. We're going to go into the first topic, and we're going to start very heated. So, recently there's been a discussion online about how we should interact with somebody who's re-entered the online political space, Lauren Southern. And so, I'll just get straight to the case. Should we platform Lauren Southern? And a few people have asked me that why isn't Lauren Southern included in this conversation? Well, that would kind of defeat the purpose of the question, wouldn't it? So, we're going to start probably with her biggest defender in the top left-hand corner, Connor.
Listen, there's something called responsible platforming. I learned it from all the lefties. It's basically where you have people on, you criticize their perspectives that you think are dog shit, you concede the ground that is worthy of being productive, and that's pretty much it. So basically, since I've quote unquote assisted her rehabilitation or whatever the fuck you want to call it, I got righties malding in my fucking chat because I'm not extreme enough and she's not being extreme enough. And I think that my goal, my publicly stated goal, talk to these people and try to get them to stop being criminally fucking insane. And you can't do that with these people. So I'll leave it there for now.
Okay. Next is going to be Demon Machine.
I honestly had to ask who Lauren Southern was, so that doesn't help much in my case. But I'm not the type that supports deplatforming people just because I don't like what they have to say. If you have something to say, you can say it. You're more than welcome to do that. If you want to bring them on the show, that's up to you, of course, because it's your show type thing. But whether they should be allowed to have a place to speak, yeah, I think they should. It's just the people that are usually the most to be silenced you need to hear what they have to say is kind of the thing, whether it's good or bad. And if it's terrible, then you can look at them and be like, ha, that's stupid. But everybody gets to hear it and everybody gets to laugh at them together. And we can say, wow, that's actually insane. And so then everybody has that defense, and it's not like a new argument that's just popped up and you're like, whoa, what is this section? Or what is this segment of knowledge that I have not yet run into? So anyway, that's it for me.
Okay. Now we're going to throw it over to Fabian Liberty.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this question is that it really kind of shows the difference between left and right wing people, right? I mean, because for the right, at least in a current instantiation, obviously not, the 90s, 80s kind of right wing William F. Buckley people, the idea of deplatforming is such a taboo, right? Whereas the left, there's kind of this, perceived legitimacy to the conversation about whether or not we should be putting someone's views forward. But I think I want to take the hot take here a little bit and think that despite Lauren Southern's kind of history of being involved with, ethno-nationalists and some of the really far light or far right kind of situations, I think she's actually really good for the left. Because I think the left on Twitch has been in such a situation where there's not a lot of strong figures on the right that they've been able to buttress themselves against, challenge their ideas, and really engage with an audience that is right wing and bring them to the left or vice versa. And I think what happens instead is we've devolved a little bit into Twitch politics community where you have a few right wing streamers that are speaking to their core audience, and a lot of left wing political streamers that are kind of attacking each other on whether or not this person's a neoliberal fascist, or whether or not, this anarchist is too left wing, or whether or not someone's a Marxist and that makes them a tanky. And so I think Lauren Southern, because what are we all going to fucking attack Rob Noor? Like, is that really the final boss of conservatism for Twitch politics? And so I think bringing in someone like Lauren Southern that is uncomfortable to the audience and uncomfortable to the community, I think is only going to strengthen some of the left-wing argumentation and things, assuming that you do what you said, like responsible platforming, and you don't have someone debate them that is totally out of their element and instead just Southern look good. So even if you disagree with her views, I think it's important to understand that I actually think this is going to be ultimately good for the left-wing individuals on the platform and grow the platform as a whole.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to throw it over to Infrared.
Yeah, I think the only issue with the platforming of in general, not her, I don't have an issue with her, would be like people who are they're just too wild. They can't follow rules. They're they're doing like outright hate speech, like calling to attack people and just being like really, not being able to, they have to say the N word and all that kind of shit. If you can behave yourself and be a normal human being, I personally don't care what your views are. I don't want to deplatform anyone because of their views. No matter how heinous it is, if you can just be civil about it in a sense, like not be edgy. I don't really see what the issue is. It's like, okay, she has ideas that are people disagree with, so like confront those ideas and actually try to persuade the audience that you have the correct view. I guess it's cool that she is here because Twitch is kind of an echo chamber, to be honest. Like, it's a kind of a left-wing echo chamber for the most part. So it spices things up. I think it's cool. It's good content, and yeah, that's my position.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Jangles.
I actually agree with Scott quite a bit. Yeah, I don't know why people are like viewing Lauren Southern as this big final boss of Twitch. Not even a final boss. It's like she's so powerful. She's so far above us, or that if we even engage with her, it can only make her stronger. And we're just so weak and feeble that we couldn't possibly do anything to take down her amazing idea. If you talk like that, I think you're doing her work for her. I think you are her PR team when it's just this like, no, she's too dangerous, she's too smart, she's too good. We can't platform her, or else she's gonna take away all of our audience, and we can't take away any of hers. I think you're doing her PR work for her. Like she's not dumb. She's not that smart about everything. The people I've seen go up against her just I don't like, especially on the Q&As and stuff, just didn't do their research. The people who did bad didn't do their research. They half remember something they saw in a on video like 3 years ago, and they thought that was enough to like just to go attack her character. No, don't do that. Know a lot about a subject. It's actually that easy. And if she really is the evil white supremacist, that honestly I think her views haven't changed much. I honestly think like deep down she hasn't changed all that much. But who cares? If she's not putting that out there, eventually her white nationalist audience is going to get like really frustrated with her. That, oh, why isn't she saying it? Why is she agreeing with all these people who are saying that the brown people aren't bad? Why are they letting her get away with it? Yeah, I think that eventually the white nationalist side is going to get super frustrated and start to like die off. So that extremist side is going to look elsewhere, which you've essentially deplatformed her from them. And maybe she does like, even if she's completely disingenuous, if she's forced to like tailor her rhetoric to a far less extreme position, isn't that good? To have like someone who's like this big far right figure, like even if it's through force or even if it's dishonest, isn't it good to like get her rhetoric a little bit more moderate? And like I said, like if you know more than her and you've talked to other people in the past year or so and you know how to speak to other humans, go for it. Like if you think it's actually not that hard to like do well in a debate against her. I don't know why people view her with this like put her up on that pedestal. So
okay, now I'm gonna throw it over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah. Once again, thanks for having me, Dylan. She's my enemy, so I'll never put her on my stream. However, there have been people who have, and predominantly has been what's alluded from Haas, Liberty, Jangles. Those individuals who challenge her on those ideas on the left are incredibly insufficient and incredibly unprepared. And something that I hope those of you who are within this panel space and want to platform Lauren Southern, that you keep that in mind, where you can't, these individuals are crypto. So they're not going to overtly say the thing that you think that is like the aha moment. They're going to allude to certain things. And I think you ought to challenge those things. I think one of the problems is that these people are handled with kid gloves, and I just don't think that's sufficient, right? Because if you don't handle that person to the extent that you would another leftist, then why are you wasting your time bringing that person into your space if you're not going to really challenge them on their ideas? And that's pretty much what I've seen so far, is that the people who have been, which have predominantly been on the left, like, it's been insufficient. We've seen what Rose Wrist did to expose Lauren Southern, we see the reaction. You can go to the VODs, you can go to the reactions of the content. So we have an individual who showed a precedent of like how you can challenge an individual with an idea and then just watch them cope when you know they're not walking back anything of their position, or just straight up lying in tweets. So I hopefully people pay attention to Rose Wrist's content, because I think for a 17-year-old kid to show a bunch of grown adults that his playbook is better than theirs is pretty fucking embarrassing if you're on the left.
Kevin Castley.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So my view on this in general is that I don't have an issue with platforming people per se. I think the issue has already been kind of discussed a little bit there by Joe Lewis, that if you're somebody who hasn't really done your research, or if you're not going to ask sufficiently hard-hitting questions or be able to detect dog whistles, that's where it can get a little bit problematic. I know in my early days, when I was doing content, I did have people do dog whistles, and that just kind of went over my head a little bit. I try to be more on the ball about that now. You know, people bring up things like cultural Marxism, these types of dog whistles, a lot more subtle ones too. So I think being aware, having a good dog whistle radar is a good piece of equipment for going in and debating people like that. I also think that in general, platforming people, I think, especially if it's for debate, is usually it can be a good thing. I would love to debate Lauren Southern. I mean, she's done some pretty despicable stuff in the past. I mean, you can talk about trying to stop search and rescue of refugees fleeing for their lives from Bashar the Butcher's regime, for example, in Syria. She was trying to stop that. That was pretty gross. I'd love to talk with her. But I think that at the end of the day, though, if you just simply don't engage with anybody on that side, what it does is it means that their audience is essentially only going to be watching a complete and total echo chamber where they get more and more radicalized, and they're not exposed to any views that are socially liberal, that are socially progressive, that they don't actually have a chance of having their minds changed because they've been sucked into a vortex, which is comprised of people that they can't get an audience anywhere else. And so those people become more and more radicalized, and that at the end of the day, it does lead in aggregate to a more divisive and a less close-knit sort of social culture, which can, of course, exacerbate other divisions. So I think having things like, panel shows and debates are a good thing to try to, reduce some of the tensions in terms of the culture war. But I do think that you have to do it in a way where you're not letting dog whistles fly without calling them out, and you are holding people to account on statements and actions that they've done. So thank you.
Okay, now over to Xanderhal.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I feel like I might end up agreeing more with the conservatives on the panel than a lot of the left-leaning people. I think, and this is going to piss off a lot of left-wing people, but I think that Blair White has pretty successfully rehabilitated her image in the eyes of a lot of like the general public that are interested in politics. You can't go on and platform Lauren Southern and try to argue like you're arguing with 2016 Lauren Southern. I've seen a lot of people try to do that. It's something I tried to avoid, and I debated her, though I think I was way too nice. And if you go too hard on it, you could have something like what happened with Lance, where you're debating 2016 Lauren Southern. If you're going to platform her, you need to go into it with sort of a few things in mind, at least in my opinion. I don't think there's anything wrong in and of itself with having Lauren Southern on. Obviously, you should do your due diligence, do your research, try to do the best you can. But, debating is something that you get better at as you practice and you do have experience with it. If you're like a left-wing debate bro, I would probably advise that you at some point try to debate Lauren Southern. I mean, she's very good at debating, so it's going to be something that you're going to be able to sort of learn from significantly. I don't think that most lefty creators platforming Lauren Southern are going to harm the discourse in any way. I think that she's already so large and has been around for so long, and as everybody knows of her, that it's pretty hard for any lefty figure to platform her. More likely, it's her platforming you. And that's more or less all I have to say about it.
Okay. We're going to now open it up to general discussion. You can respond to anybody else or make your comments known.
Well, yeah, I'll just basically say on the point. Well, yeah, just on the point about, the alt-right in general and people like Lauren Southern, I think one of the big areas, and I kind of mentioned this a bit in my intro here, one of the big areas that they do have kind of an advantage is that they have a lot of dog whistles, and so on that you've got to be more or less aware of what's going on. But I do think that the idea that, well, we can't engage with people that are of that sort of branch at all. It basically, the other thing that it does, the other outcome that it does, is it gives people on that side the impression that people that are socially liberal are just scared to debate them. It basically legitimizes them as the only people that are able to say these things, and that everybody else is too scared to engage with it. I don't think that anybody's necessarily scared to engage with her. I think that there's just a debate over whether or not you're doing a net harm or net good to society by ignoring it or engaging with it. I would still say that you're doing a net good by engaging with these types of ideas and basically calling out them for what they are. So
Yeah, I think it's really kind of naive to say that we platform Lauren Southern as if her being platformed is up to us. She has a Twitch channel. Have you ever So for those in chat, have you ever watched a Twitch stream before? What is 99% of Twitch streams? It's someone reacting to a video someone else made. So it's not like if we don't go debate her, she's not going to react to and debunk and shit on left-wing content. That's what streaming is. We haven't denied her a platform. We haven't denied her reach to our audience. We haven't denied her the ability to abuse other creators if we don't go and debate her. She's going to do that anyway because that's actually how Twitch works. All we've done if we refuse to debate her is make sure that she gets to do it without us in the room, without us being able there to defend our own ideas, without us there to push back on hers. It doesn't take much to take these people down. And I'm not saying take them down. I'm like, just if you think someone is like Dog Wilson and stuff, just keep asking questions. Narrow in on what they actually think. If they pivot away, call it out. And again, if you just know more about the topic than they do, and you've talked to other people before, if you've got some debates under your belt, it's not actually that hard to do well against these people. So I don't like it. People just think she's so fucking scary when she isn't.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. But yeah. So if you don't mind me jumping in, just because,
yeah,
I've been a partner or whatever. I think the key thing is this is all boiled down to back end rhetorical stuff that is obvious when you do a lot of debates, but it's maybe not so obvious when you don't do a lot of debates. So for instance, Jangles and Haas both came in on something called the Gauntlet, which is 10-minute back to back kind of debates or whatever. Jangles did really well, presented a bunch of information that I virtually guarantee Lauren's audience hasn't heard or seen before. Haas, because he's an esoteric political figure, I guarantee they never heard any of his fucking arguments before. And that was kind of the funny thing was just watching the shock, both from the audience and from Lauren, who had never dealt with a Marxist Leninist before. And so that's what I'm kind of saying is I would say at this point, based off of conversations and all that kind of stuff, Lauren's stated politics are probably Christian conservatism that fall in line with MAGA. They're probably the same level of nefariousness as you would associate with anybody who's a supporter of Donald Trump. I don't know if she supports Donald Trump, but at the same time, that's the audience that you're going for. So you're talking about 20% to 30% of the American public. You can deem them nefarious, you can deem them evil, but at the same time, those are the people that you need to go after. Those are the people that you need to convince that you have stronger arguments. Those are the things that basically for the past decade, because I ran in right-wing circles, those are the people who, basically when you joke about Mayo-side on Twitter, they screenshot that, they post that to Facebook without metrics, and they say the left wants to genocide white people. And that's that's kind of the audience that hasn't been exposed to stronger centrist or left-wing arguments. So that's who you're going.
I wanted to. Oh, sorry. Do you mind if I hop in real quick, Cass?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and I kind of want to add a little context to what Superpower Broadcasting was talking about, right? Because we have science on this, right? And I think that's one of the big issues that we need to understand is, what does the science say about echo chambers and about how right wingers kind of differ from left wingers as we move people like Styx Hexenhammer, right, and Lauren Southern and more right wing, YouTube or libertarian YouTube individuals enter the platform. And so I think one of the great things we can look at is moral foundations theory, right? Jonathan Haidt's research on moral psychology, right? You have, the left is very concerned with harm and fairness, right? Whereas conservatives kind of work on a 5-point scale much more, which is harm, fairness, in-group preference, authority, and purity or sacredity, right? And then when you couple that with personality trait, right, like the big five, right, you have conservatives have a lot more conscientiousness, so industriousness, orderliness, and lefties tend to have higher traits in personality trait openness, right? Openness to ideas and openness to creativity and intelligence, right? And so when you take those factors and you bring them in context of this situation, what you understand is that right-wing individuals are far more likely to coalesce by their favorite streamer and hang out with their favorite streamer and not engage with other content, right? Whereas left-wing streamers are far more, viewers are far more likely to maybe go see a Lauren Southern and then back away, right? Or go see a CTV and then back away, or come to my channel, right, and back away, right? They're more open to these ideas. And so when talking about the danger of echo chambers on a platform, you have to understand that the bigger danger, the bigger threat is that a right-wing audience becomes an echo chamber than, let's say, a left-wing audience. Obviously ignoring censorship and the fact that TOS is somewhat based off of left-wing cultural values and things like that in Twitter and Facebook. But even still, right, I think it's important to understand that if you don't engage with Lauren Southern, her audience will coalesce around her, not branch out and watch her content as she reacts to other people and become more entrenched in their political views. Whereas the left is likely to end up going to her channel and seeing her unchallenged by you, the streamer, that could be kind of debunking what you believe to be a mythos that she has constructed around some type of idea based off of her ideology. And so I think it's far more important here that the left engages with Lauren Southern than it actually is that the right engages with left-wing streamers. And so I think that's something to consider if you're a left-wing streamer, is kind of understanding that basic psychology of personality psychology and moral psychology.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that ultimately she's going to be.
Wait, Kevin, stop. It was Haz's turn next.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically what I'm saying is I really do not understand what all the fuss is about, because Twitch is already so super strict and so it has standards that are so divorced from the majority of Americans in general. It's like, I don't get people who just spend their time like wanting to deplatform others, like going above and beyond the rules Twitch has already created. Like, Twitch is allowing her to be here, so like, why do you have to be like?
Can I explain the fuss just because I'm
give me a sec. And like, to me, it's like I really think people who are always trying to hate on other people's content, even though Twitch is already so super strict, I feel like these people just don't have their own content. They don't have anything to offer, so they just gotta like be hall monitors, And it's like, it's just super lame to me. I don't know. It's like, I mean, like, dude, not everyone's gonna agree with you. I don't see why people are so sensitive,
Yeah, so I would like to explain some of that sensitivity.
Then Kevin, then I think it was Zan.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. So the two main criticisms of Lauren Southern specifically is she blocked a refugee boat called the Aquarius that was trying to leave an Italian port. The Aquarius is a controversial boat. Basically, Lauren Southern and right-wing figures in the Italian government accuse them of coordinating with human traffickers off the coast of Lebanon in order to move immigrants and refugees into Europe. But the Aquarius actually has a pretty good reputation as an NGO and was working with Doctors Without Borders in order to assist people who were stranded in the Mediterranean. So we really don't know what to say there, except for the fact that Lauren Southern blocked a refugee transport ship that was attempting to save refugees. That was one of the main criticisms against her. Since then, the Aquarius has had its charter revoked, basically. But that's just kind of details. The second thing that she is the reason why people are sensitive about is because of the concept of the Great Replacement theory. This is a theory that was popularized by a French philosopher named like Henri Camus or something like that. It basically says that mass immigration into the Western world is a unconscious but still governmentally intentional cultural shift where white people will no longer be the majority within Western nations within a generation because our leaders view them as completely replaceable in the sense that like we can just accept endless amounts of immigration into the Western world and it doesn't really matter who lives in the Western world, whether they're white or not. And this Great Migration was one of the cited reasons while Lauren Southern specifically was not the person that was like cited in this manifesto. The shooter who shot up the mosque in New Zealand and I think killed like 50 to 55 people in general was somebody who bought into a lot of dissident right figures and also bought in specifically to the Great Replacement theory, believing that this was an intentional act to replace white people in the European and Western world with immigrants. And those are the two largest controversies, and that's why people are upset.
Yeah, I just think it'd be so much easier though, because I'm a Middle Eastern person, right? So I don't know what people are saying. You know, like I much prefer to just, you know, if these ideas are becoming so widespread as a result of not being censored, then it would be super easy for me to just, you know, debate them. I could just debate them, and you know, if you could deal with this stuff in the light of day, then I just think it would be less like likely to give birth to these psychopaths who are like, you know, in the dark web or whatever. And, you know, personally to me, I just think people are super sensitive. You got to realize people have all wide ranging views of things about the world. And you need to be able to just either accept that, or you can debate them and just put forward your ideas, put forward theirs. You know, I think one of the issues here, honestly, from my perspective, is that this is kind of the implicit thing, is that the majority of leftists and liberals literally do not know how to beat right-wing people argumentatively. They can't prevail when it comes to the actual merit of their ideas. So they get to this emergency mode of having to censor people because they literally don't even know how to respond, right? Because for me, for example, I'm a Marxist-Leninist. It's very easy for me to talk to even extreme right-wing people and debate them, and just, you know, it's easy for me to, because I can understand their kind of ideological I guess fantasy or whatever. It's like because I understand the contradictions within the prevailing ideology that gives rise to that, like why the mainstream is giving rise to these extremist ideologies, because there's something wrong with the mainstream, and I understand that. So for me, it's super easy to deal with these ideas. I don't know, deal with them, but at least put forward an alternative to them. Whereas it seems that people who represent the mainstream ideology cannot cover up the contradictions within the mainstream liberal ideology, so they end up just getting rolled by these like extreme right-wing people. And I think it's just a high point of hypocrisy that they have to resort to censorship to just cover up their own flaws.
Well, there's something also we got to recognize.
Then after you, Joe, it's going to be Kevin Zan.
Sure, absolutely. There's also a recognition that, like I mentioned in my opening and everybody alluded to, is that the mainstream, in this case, the Twitch left, because that's where she's navigating in, is incredibly insufficient, even talking amongst themselves about the very policies that they advocate for. Like, we have people going on like panels for Prime Kais about the suburbs and don't know the differences between like R1 housing and R2 housing. And then you get people who are more invested in this and have like a invested interest in politics and invested interest in policy and advocating for the communities. And then you have to sort of, like in my case, I have to sit there and watch like these people navigate with these individuals, and they crumple, or even in the face of somebody who clearly, especially for the marginalized individuals, like the Black individuals and persons of color who jump into this arena, that it's very clear in their opening statements, or like the first 10 minutes, that they don't care about your existence. So why are you handling this person with a level of sensitivity when within the extrapolation of their ideology, you don't fucking exist? And then I just kind of had to sit there and watch it. And like, listen, man, like I don't do competitive one-on-one conversations like this. I navigate within panels and do my own thing. But for those who go into those arenas for the one-on-one conversations, then it's up to them to make sure that they're the best representative of whatever they're advocating for, and not letting up on like the small concessions that they give these more far-right individuals.
Kevin and then Sam.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So, I mean, it's already been brought up a little bit, but I think an important point to mention is that she's going to react to people's content whether or not you engage with her. So basically what it comes down to is either, do you want her audience, and obviously we're talking about Lauren Southern here, but this argument and this discussion could apply to any sort of alt-right, or if you want to say like Christian conservative type folks, that their audience is either going to be getting if you're big enough for her to react to, your views analyzed through her bias exclusively, or you participate in debating her and you get to defend yourself. And so I know, Joe Lewis, you were talking about how you're not really interested in doing these sort of one-on-one sort of debates and everything. That's like, I could get that. Obviously, they could get pretty crazy and whatnot. But I guess if she were to react to you and say one of your streams or something, would you rather be there to defend yourself, or would you rather just not engage with her and have her audience have this view of you that's completely tinged through her lens of bias, I guess?
Well, I mean, to answer that pretty directly, this is why I think it's very important. Like for me, right? Like I do solo content on Twitch, and every once in a while I have a back and forth with a couple of like, essentially it's like I argue with Rob Noor and a couple of other more far right readies. But my whole thing is that one of the things that people have access when they watch my content and subscribe to my content are VODs. So if you subscribe, you can watch my VODs. I'm very clear, like if you have a position that you want to have a conversation with, we can have a conversation on it. But for the most part, like even the right hasn't really like brought that up. But I mean, like, hey, like if Lauren Southern wants to watch my content and pay the subscription to watch my VOD and commentate on my content, I still won't bring her on my platform. Like I have too many other people, I have too many other things outside of this that matter, right? Like I'm running for the Board of Education of my township. I have aspirations for my city council. I have aspirations as a music educator, and I don't want to put like my students who know that like I exist on the internet, my community that I've spent time building, like be subject to sitting through something that's going to make them that uncomfortable. And
No, I don't
that's
think
something.
I don't think the question is, do you
Can we
personally
let
have to
Xander
put
go?
Lauren Southern on?
I was gonna be Xander.
Would you
but
say Jangles? You felt it was important, so I
We'll
want to
be
make sure
Xander
your voice is
afterwards.
heard.
I don't think the conversation is, should you personally host Lauren Southern? It's just like,
Yeah, I guess then can you re-ask that then, Kevin? I was going.
Oh yeah, no. I was just asking a hypothetical where Lauren was reacting to say one of your streams or something,
Sure.
or was talking about your views. My point was just either her audience sees that entirely through her lens of bias, or you engage with her and then you get to defend yourself and maybe change minds or get the ball rolling. And
Oh, yes.
some of her
I see
audience
what you're saying. I mean, sure, yeah. I mean, like lefties unironically think I'm a genocide denier and a crypto black separatist, and then the right think I'm literally Hitler. So, like, these people have been like who set the narrative for what I do on this platform already do this, and it's the same precedent that I do. I just kind of ignore them. But for the most part, which is very interesting, which is kind of trying knocking at, is these people already don't consume my content. So if Lauren Southern were to do that, she'd be the first. So I have within this hypothetical, it hasn't happened yet, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay, Xanderhal.
So
Yeah, I want to go back to what Infrared brought up earlier, having to do with deplatforming people. I think that it's kind of a double-edged sword. I don't think that deplatforming is so much a revealing from the left that we can't handle the right's ideas and that we have to ban them and deplatform them to keep their ideas from getting out. I think that's done more so to avoid accountability for these platforms when it comes to individuals that are using them spreading misinformation. Though I will admit, it is a double-edged sword in the way that when you ban a large right-wing figure or even a left-wing figure, this contributes to a narrative that this group is being attacked by a larger, more powerful one that wants to keep their ideas on the
Streisand
down low.
effect.
Yeah, Streisand effect to a degree, right? Like, why are you trying to hide these ideas if they're so bad? Why not just let them be out there and debate them? And I do think there is certainly a lot of merit to like debating these ideas. I mean, it's why I do what I do, right? When it comes to platforming Lauren Southern specifically, I don't see any point. Like, I mean, obviously it's all personal preference, but at least for me, I don't see any point in trying to avoid any interaction with Lauren Southern. I'm probably going to talk to her again quite a few times in the near future. Who knows? I think it's just one of those things where if you disagree on things, debate other figures about them. It's content. It's going to help people improve what they believe and figure out better arguments for what they believe, or figure out arguments against what they believe to help defend what they believe, maybe change their minds. And I, like Infrared brought up before, Lauren Southern's not currently breaking TOS on Twitch, as far as I'm aware. So I don't see her getting banned anytime soon. So she's around, we're just going to have to kind of deal with that. As far as I'm concerned, she's been pretty nice to me. I don't really have all that much against her anymore. I know about her past, and I know that her past has been spotty, to say the least. I watched her when I was younger. But I mean, you can't, without very hard evidence, hold past actions on a person who doesn't believe those things anymore, at least claims they don't, and come off not looking like a crazy person. You know what I mean? Like, if you try to go on there and be like, Lauren, how do you feel about your responsibility for the Christchurch shooting? You're going to look like a fucking crazy person. You can't do that. That's never going to work. You're going to look insane to anybody who's not already bought in entirely on what you already believe.
Respectfully, though, Xanderhal, there's a big problem.
Wait, everybody, wait. That was 3 people talking at once.
Sure.
If you were just talking, could you raise your hand quick so I'll just pick who's ever talked the least? Last time I haven't heard. Oof, you've all talked a decent amount. I'm gonna give it to Haas, Fabian, Connor, then Joe.
Yeah, I think the issue with looking at it from the perspective of misinformation, I have a philosophical issue with that because it's assuming that there's a consensus about the stream of information that's coming, and there's no such consensus exists. Not legally, not institutionally, in terms of the American state is concerned. The precedent that America has established for itself is one of the First Amendment, free speech. So there is no exclusive, privileged stream of information that, I mean, I don't agree.
Depends on information.
I don't think there's anyone on this platform that I can say that, like, I share a consensus with you guys about what is the privileged stream of what information is. So I don't think there's a consensus about truth. I think truth is something that is being suspended in reality, and which is a matter of dispute, which has to be dealt with in that matter. I think America is the Wild West, so to speak. If you think something is misinformation, you should prove the significance of that information in some kind of way, beyond having to silence your opponents, because really it is a slippery slope. We're going to get to a point
against that a lot
where we're going to, because you have to understand that the realities of a statehood and political realities are not just objective realities, they're also subjective ones. So we are coming to a point where tautologically, all political opponents will be eliminated from the establishment, the mainstream, in the name of misinformation, not necessarily because they have gotten a reality wrong objectively, but because they take a subjective stance different from the status quo, thereby endangering a different relationship to objective reality. So you cannot have this kind of philosophical view that there is just a blank objective reality out there and it's just a matter of being correct, because we subjectively participate in that reality. So that's why I take issue with the misinformation view.
1 second.
So
Jangles, you disagree with that? Wait. Jangles disagreed with that. Want to say something? So I want to throw it over to Jangles, and I'm writing down everybody's name on the list. I got you, Zan.
Okay, I'm sorry that this is gonna like get pretty far off topic, but I'll try to rein it back in. So just because an objective reality doesn't exist, all right? None of us are a view from nowhere. We all have our subjective opinions and all that stuff. You can admit that and also recognize that you can also lie. You can also spread misinformation. While there's not a single arbiter of truth out there, it's not like the truest ideas like sink to the surface. I am a huge advocate for debate. I will debate anyone. I think the vast majority of ideas should be debated, but I'm also not going to sit here and pretend that the best ideas, the most truthful ideas, win every single time. I mean, like, I don't know how you could possibly think that with the past couple of years. Like, people will believe what they're motivated to believe. Half the people, like, there's a disturbingly high percentage of Americans who don't believe the vaccine works, or thinks the vaccine is going to like actually give them COVID or some crazy shit, or think that like horse pace is the answer to all of our problems or something like that. So we shouldn't. I kind of agree with you that we shouldn't see truth as this. There's just one singular objective truth, this omnipotent truth. No, truth is a consensus. It depends on what field. It depends on what information. That's why I was a little like weirded out by like you just say information like it's this big blob, as if there's not vastly different types of information out there. I will push back. You can very easily spread misinformation, and it can be very, very harmful when done in the wrong way. Debate can be a solution to that, but we shouldn't pretend that the truest ideas are the ones that always win.
They do.
Okay, so
you have a narrow view of what truth is. You think truth is only the factual, objective content, not a deeper subjective truth in relation to institutions. For example,
Well, that's just my subjective truth. So who do you?
all right, so well, let me step in. Well, you said it was
give
him,
it a
then
second.
me, and then
Jangles Jangles just asked Haas a question. I would like to give Haas the.
It was mostly a facetious question. Like,
Facetious-
that's just my subjective truth, dude. How you gonna prove it's wrong?
Okay, Fabian, you are on the list. I'll give it to Fabian, Zan, Connor, then Joe. I just want to go in that order because I know Zan wants to ask Kaz a question as well.
Rap. I'll engage with the current discussion in just a second, but I just wanted to point out the hilarity kind of the fact that like a Marxist-Leninist and I and ANCAP are almost in total agreement from earlier before. And I was actually having this conversation with Proudly Radical left-wing anarchists, and we were all in agreement too that I think one of the issues, and this is going back a little bit, but I promise I'll bring it to the current conversation, is that the left knows how to debate but doesn't know how to argue, and the right understands how to argue, but they don't know how to debate. And I think platforming individuals
I'm sorry,
such
can you
as
explain?
this,
Just
right?
to
So
clear-
debate, like
Usually
you're
the difference between
academic,
arguing and
like
debate.
I'm going to break apart the science. I'm going to show this study. I'm going to show why this study, you know what I mean? Like I'm going to go into the methodology of this research study. I'm going to look at this meta-analysis, right? These are all great debate logos things, right? But in rhetoric, logos is very unimportant when compared to pathos and ethos, establishing credibility and talking about, narrative identity and talking about the story and
the
talking about the
former is-
emotions.
And
Right, the
former
left is
arguing, and
great.
the second is debate.
Right. The former is
I'm just
arguing, the
making sure I got the
second is
nomenclature, sorry.
debating, right? Like colloquially speaking, obviously. You know what I mean? Like technically speaking, we can get into the weeds on those definitions. But I just want to say that I kind of agree with Haz here, that I think that this will be good for people to learn how to argue. Because someone like Lauren Southern is an amazing at arguing about using emotions and using and that's a big part of this whole dog whistling thing we're back and forth about, right? Is these dog whistles are more than just like, hey, I'm mentioning a topic, and they're a lot of times they're about I'm drumming up fears and concerns and emotional things and infiltrating that into the conversation, and my audience understands that, right? It's a communication rhetoric tactic more than it is just like the danger of the thing. But getting into this idea about about contingency logic versus traditional logic, right? And I'm sorry, but Haz is completely correct here again, right? Like subjectivity is a portion of truth in almost every aspect. I mean, even the great Enlightenment thinkers that kind of formulated liberal democracy as we have it today, like C. Wright Mills, right? Like on liberty, like read on liberty and understand why dangerous ideas often are important. And so it's important that we debate the ideas that are held by a minority opinion and prove them wrong. But you also have to understand that William Lloyd Garrison was a radical and an extremist with a massively unpopular opinion that many people tried to censor and tried to shut down his publications. And you know what his radical belief was? Black people shouldn't be slaves. Right. I mean, so there are also ideas that are very not well accepted. Right. You might think that veganism, for example, is an absurd idea that most people are against. But in 100 years, we might look at ourselves as being monsters for supporting, factory farming and things of that nature. So there's a lot of ideas that are rare, but need to be challenged so that those good ones do spring forth and do bring progress.
I think that's an okay point to make, and I do understand. I do like that you're differentiating somewhat fuzzily between arguing and debating. I agree with that, but also be careful when you use that example of the Galileo example. Like this one guy, everyone thought he was wrong. They tried to silence him, but he ended up being right. For every Galileo, I know that wasn't the example you used, but same spirit. For every Galileo, there's 100,000 kooks out there.
Yeah, absolutely, which is why we should challenge the ideas that are kooks, right? And we shouldn't have a system of state authority or institutional authority on the Twitch politics sphere, or authority in terms of social media companies that try and push out all radical ideas. Instead, we should bring them to the front, and we should laugh at all these stupid ones, and the ones that make a little bit of sense should challenge the way we view and see the world, because truth is subjective and we never know how these things might change.
Okay, I want to move it over. Can I move? I'm sorry, but I got to move the conversation forward to people who haven't talked yet. Zan, Connor, then Joe. Sorry, I haven't forgot you guys.
Yeah, so truth is, of course, subjective. We all know this, opinions and whatnot, so on, whatever, right? When I talk about deplatforming people because of spreading misinformation, I'll give a good example. I think this is an example it's pretty hard to argue against, an example of misinformation being spread knowingly and maliciously in order to cause harm. Alex Jones claiming that the Sandy Hook shooting was a false flag and that the parents of the dead kids were crisis actors. This was a lie. And Alex Jones's audience proceeded to then send death threats and harassment to the families of these murdered children, and Alex Jones is banned for that. I think that is fine. That is an instance of deplatforming that you will never, ever see me arguing against. Though I'll admit, while I may celebrate it, I don't know if on principle it's a good thing to ban people and deplatform them simply for opinions that are harmful. My issue is when information or ideas that are being pushed forward as authoritative claims, like this is how things are, that have been well and truly debunked by authoritative sources, like real authoritative sources that we've generally come to recognize as being valid, are being spread by individuals that are causing harm. That's where I'm on board with the deplatforming.
Yeah, but where's Infowars.com now, right? I mean, Infowars.com is one
Not
of the
on
biggest
YouTube.
media organizations in America. Like, all that's happened is now he's been pushed into a right-wing echo chamber where these people can go on Infowars.com and they can put it as the website as an app on their iPhone or on their Android, and they
Sure.
watch his content and it's never fucking challenged. And then they go out and think radical, crazy shit because these ideas aren't in a space like Twitch politics where people can do reaction videos and laugh at them and where they're challenged and they're forced to engage with other people.
They very
The
much can.
deplatforming of
People
him
very
has
much
made
can
him
and
more
do.
dangerous.
But
Not
people very much
exactly. That's
can and
actually
do.
not
wait,
true.
wait. Okay, there's two.
Nobody's
Wait.
nobody's
There's two of you
stumbling
talking.
True.
Okay,
Fair
wait.
enough, Jingles. Sorry.
Stop. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fabian, Zan, and Jangles, do you guys have a history of hearing problems?
Nah.
Yes.
No, then you should.
I do.
Well, but Demon Machine, we're talking. If you don't have a history of hearing problems, then you should be able to hear me. If not, turn my volume up. I would actually appreciate if you all turn my volume up a little bit so you can hear me when I'm talking so I can moderate. So we're going to have Zan respond, then Jangles respond, then we got to go to Connor and Joe.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so you can argue that deplatforming these people just means their audience is sent to an even tighter echo chamber where they're not going to hear arguments against their ideas. And I'll completely concede that that's going to be the case in basically every instance of banning a figure who's spreading misinformation or has a certain idea, right or left wing. My problem is, though, and the reason why I disagree with the statement you're making is because now that these figures have been banned and sent to much more, what's the word for it? Less mainstream places, you're not going to have situations like the rampant political movement that happened in 2014 to 2016, where you could watch like some gaming video and the YouTube algorithm's going to take you to some SJW cringe compilation. Then you stumble across Alex Jones eventually. We know this has happened. We know that a lot of people have been in this situation. Taking these people off of large mainstream platforms limits their reach. While it does make it so their already existing audience, it's harder for them to interact with people who disagree with them, it does limit their reach. A lot less people are going to fall into their content or what they have to say from there.
I mean, but he's grown. He's grown since being banned. So
Jangles?
He's grown since being banned in the sense that mainstream political figures have shouted him out. But as far as like the YouTube algorithm and people discovering him like organically through the algorithms on Twitter, and I don't even know if that's true, by the way, if he's grown, but I am aware of the fact that people like Donald Trump and plenty of right-wing political activists and figures and politicians here in America have shouted him out and have given him attention. But without that, I don't think he would be growing very much. Without the help of Twitter, Instagram, I don't know, YouTube, these large mainstream platforms that have an algorithm built to keep feeding you what you're already watching. YouTube doesn't show you things that contradict what you're already enjoying. YouTube's just going to keep feeding you more of what they know you want to watch because it's what keeps you watching. It's what keeps you seeing ads. It's what keeps them making money. It's what keeps making YouTube or Twitter or whatever making more money. They're not going to be exposing you to new ideas either way. At this point, all it does is keep people like Alex Jones from gaining a larger audience.
Okay.
But again,
wait. I just got to get through these people. I got to go over to Jangles before we go to Connor and Joe, who've been waiting for almost like 20 minutes now. Jangles?
Oh, I just had that one comment about like people do react to Alex Jones. So like when you search Infowars or Alex Jones on YouTube, you're gonna get a lot of like debunking first and foremost. So, and I think he agreed with people still react to him. That's all I had to say.
Okay. Connor?
Yay. So, all right. So this is kind of the question though, because it's really interesting to me because we're teasing this out of what is the Overton window and is it exclusively terms of service? So, for instance, I think Xanderhal brought up a good point. Alex Jones was banned because he basically started a harassment campaign that was based on false information. I think I was literally looking at Stefan Molyneux. Apparently, he had a few violations of hate speech. I don't even remember what he did to get himself banned.
IQ.
But
It was the IQ discussions.
So that's interesting. So then that question kind of gets to where is the Overton window and how do we basically how do we decide that? Obviously, terms of service is kind of deciding it for us. But then I'm kind of wondering where the Overton window is here. I guess like racialism or racism is one of them. Maybe violence is the other one. Maybe harassment campaigns is the other one that we've kind of discovered through stumbling through these figures. But then one of the things that I want to say about opening up these bridges is we're constantly complaining about the polarity in our society. The right wing has gone really far right. The left wing, I know you guys hate this, but I'm going to say it anyways, has gone really far left. And it doesn't seem like people are capable of communicating without, basically one person's worldview necessarily leading to violence. So then the question becomes, how do we improve communications between these poles? And what I would tell you is from my fumbling attempts to improve communication through these poles, one, I'll just admit it. I've learned a lot from you commie fucks and progressives on this platform. But two, there's a lot of challenges when you reach out to siloed communities. And by siloed, I just mean like isolated communities. So I literally just shot. Part of the reason why I'm not yelling at you guys as much is because I basically screamed into the camera for an hour describing like historical injustice and systemic racism in America, because people were trying to say they might feel like this is a straw man, but they were trying to say systemic racism ended in 1965. And we don't have to do anything in order to fix our modern institutions. Individuals just need to act better. And I think that was like an argument that I would have expected to find in 2016 or 2017. But I'm shocked to find it 5 years later that people haven't done any amount of fucking research, haven't moved on from any of their perspectives, and they've basically sat in the same SJW wrecked compilations videos for 5 fucking years. Like, how is that possible? How do you not have the curiosity to evolve as a person or check out the counter arguments that contradict your worldview? How do you not have that inside you? And since people don't have that shit inside them, I'm sorry, but they need to be dragged kicking and screaming into the fucking world through debate. And the way that you do that is basically by finding these fucking avatars of the right wing that have siloed themselves off in communities, and you fucking fight them publicly. So that's my opinion.
Connor, these are
so if I'm understanding this correctly,
of us.
I was up next, Xanderhal. So one of the things that is interesting with that, Connor, right, is that you mentioned something along the lines of people within this space that you were arguing with believed that systemic racism and these things ended in 1965. Is that the argument that you dealt with?
It's a little bit of a straw man, but yeah, they basically said that all of our social institutions are operating as they should, and realistically, there's no problems today.
Well, yeah. I mean, like that's within like my well black issues, right? I hear that argument every day in my stream. Like there are people who come into my space and unironically believe that black people just need to lift themselves up by their bootstraps, and one of the reasons why these pesky blacks are not moving forward in society is because there's no fathers in the home, and there's no fathers in the home because they're irresponsible. Like I hear that shit every day, and my mods have to deal with it every fucking day. And then I have to sit, but then what happens is, what's very interesting is that there's like, listen, like I'm gonna be dead up. Like a lot of these lefties on Twitch and shit, they don't give a shit about black issues. They don't talk about black issues. They don't spend any time talking to black people to try to understand black issues. And then they start talking about things like systemic racism and systemic oppression. And then when they get into these conversations and debates with literal race realists and literal white nationalists, they're incredibly insufficient in their arguments. They end up like co-signing because they don't know how dog whistles work. And then I just had to sit there and go like, well, I mean, whatever. And that causes a lot of potential harm in spaces that, like, for me, that is predominantly black, and other spaces that, like, when black creators see that and they want to talk like, oh, like, let me see what's going on with the Twitch left. And then like you see people who like unironically say things like race is genetic and Black people, like one of the reasons is fathers, or they co-sign to the idea of criminality as it relates to genetic composition, or literal just what they call just genics. Like, and it's
Right.
really painful to see, you know.
Yeah, and so this is kind of my thing, is the frustration that I have with this is I feel like there are people who want to assign everything to a single variable, whether they want to make it like genetics or environment or fathers or the drug war or something like that. They want to take all of our historic issues, they want to assign it to a single variable that they don't have to deal with, because it's either too complex to deal with, or it's an unchangeable fact of reality and we can't improve anything ever. And that feels really frustrating for me, because basically, like, I don't think that's politics, or at least I hope it's not politics, is that we just look at really complex problems and we just go, yeah, it's complex. Well, if that's what we're doing here, we're wasting our fucking time.
Not to cut you off, but I totally agree. Where something that I wish people tried to do, as one example of the many things that the left on Twitch, and again, like, there are streamers and content creators that are doing fantastic work, and we ought to recognize them, right? But at the same time, like, there are certain topics that the left has exposed themselves over the past 72 hours that they claim to be leftists, but they fall into the same traps that the right sets up for them. Like, one example is within Black nationalism, where there's this continual correlation between Black nationalism and Black separatism. And then, regardless of the fact that, like, I know they don't talk to or interact with any Black people about this issue, I know they don't do any of the readings of these individuals, I know they don't know who Marcus Garvey is, let alone W. Du Bois or Elaine Brown, Stokely Carmichael, Ashada Shakur. And then, like, I just have to sit there and go, like, Jesus Christ. And then when I see them study on streams, because they tell them themselves and they do the research, it's like, oh, they just, like, go on historychannel.com or go on Wikipedia. And then when like a very few fraction, like, I'm talking about a percentage of a percentage that are doing the actual work, and I can tell because they actually reached out to me about the topic, then it's like, okay, then those individuals end up being better in the space. Like, one of the things that the Jangles and I can relate to is that if you're going to walk into a conversation, you got to know the best of your ability of the topic. But again, like, I can't stress this enough. My frustration is a lot of these people in the current mainstream. Like, again, there are people who are doing fantastic work, but all in all, the left is incredibly insufficient. And I want to ask Xanderhal something too, because he was buzzing at the bit to...
Just because you interrupted me, can
absolutely.
Can I talk real quick, and then I'll yield it right back to you? So yeah, and here's the thing: is like, this is one of the things that's really frustrating for me. Like, okay, pending either the fascist revolution or the Marxist-Leninist revolution, we live in a liberal democratic society. And liberal democratic societies function off of electoralism, which basically means that you need to have broad consensus in order to achieve reform. There is a shocking amount of things that have broad consensus, especially in the millennial generation. So basically what I would say in particular, the drug war. The drug war is universally unpopular with anybody that's under the age of 50. The decriminalization or legalization of weed, I think, polls around 70 or 80%, depending on like which ones you do. And then the decriminalization of hard drugs, while more contentious, I'm sure you could popularize if you use like a utilitarian model. So that alone would completely change the face of law enforcement. While it seems incremental to people who want to overthrow the government, it's actually a pretty big political development. And I think you would be shocked that you would be able to achieve large swaths of the left, progressives, liberals, progressives and liberals. You would absolutely be able to get libertarians. And then you would probably be surprised how many conservatives you would be able to get who consider marijuana as harmful as alcohol. And then you have less cops on the street reaching their hands into fucking people's pockets in order to find fucking narcotics that ultimately don't harm as much as alcohol or tobacco. And then right there, we have like a major incremental reform in the way that the war on drugs is prosecuted. So what I'm trying to say right now is you don't have to like somebody in order to get an electoral W. All you have to do, you don't even have to agree on the description, weirdly enough. You just have to agree on the prescription. And if you can build consensus along certain prescriptions, you can get them through the electoral process. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, as an ANCAP, I'd love to have
One second,
a
Fabian.
conversation.
Fabian, I would like to give it to Kevin first. He's waited for a little bit, and then we can give it to you, and then we're probably going to wrap up soon.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. This one was more addressed to Haas, who's not here at the moment, but he said something about how the mainstream is just, in his words, basically, that the mainstream is eventually coming to deplatform everybody on the grounds of disseminating misinformation. I disagree with that characterization. I know Haas and I debated a couple days ago on the topic of misinformation, disinformation came up. It is a fact that there are people out there, there are organizations out there, there are various groups out there that will spread disinformation, and it's been verified that there is the Internet Research Agency based in St. Petersburg that pays people about 2 to 3 times a typical Russian salary to basically, in order to go on mostly American social media, though some British social media too, and just stoke chaos, stoke division, pump out, whether it's really far left or really, and it's usually really far right, conspiracy theories to try to get people in Western societies basically to hate each other and clash with each other, because they see this as a strategy to weaken confidence in civil society and Western institutions as a means of asymmetric warfare, essentially information warfare, because we're at a point where you can't really do physical combat. I mean, obviously the US has nukes, Britain has nukes, Russia has nukes, so they stoop to doing this. It is true, misinformation is out there. As far as the mainstream, whatever that means, I guess we mean big tech going after literally everybody for spreading misinformation, though. I don't see that happening. I see that as over the top. And I think that in cases where it can be proven that people were deliberately spreading misinformation or were paid to spread misinformation, I think that it should be fine under your TOS to remove those accounts. So thanks.
So, yeah, I don't know how the laws are in Canada, but in the United States, the First Amendment has no regard for the intention whatsoever. So what the intention of so-called Russians and the Internet Research Agency has no relevance and no bearing on the First Amendment whatsoever.
Shut up. Platform service.
I would like to hear Haas finish, and then we're going to wrap up, and any other comments would have to be said during your outros. Haas?
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, this is the conclusion you would have to draw if you're thinking about this rationally. So-called consensus information truth is a matter of institutions, and it's a matter of trust in institutions, research agencies, universities, and so on and so on. This is where the so-called fact-checking, verifiable truth is actually happening. And if we can accept that we live in a human reality, we are human beings, we live in a society, we are human beings, we have a human reality. Reality is not just rocks and trees, it's also human beings. We must also accept that the matters that concern human beings are also relevant to the deeper sentiments and subjective position and class position and popular sentiment of the people. If the institutions have failed to garner the trust of the people, you do not crucify the people and say, no, the people are wrong. You evaluate the deeper reason why institutions have lost the trust of the people. Because ultimately these institutions only exist because they claim to serve the people. Why anything in our society should have any relevance beyond serving the human society in the first place? It doesn't exist for someone else. It exists for us. Now, if there is so-called widespread Russian disinformation, which I doubt, the reason for in the past or in the present, the reason for it would be that despite spreading misinformation from a purely perspective of factual truth verified by institutions, the Russians are tapping into something that is true on a deeper level, which is the fact that there is a deep antagonism within American democracy. Whether the Russians are going to accentuate that antagonism,
actually true, but it's spiritually true.
Yeah, but if I know you're really you're not literate or educated, so you don't actually know that the sense of truth that you mean, which is within the realm of natural science, from a philosophical perspective, is an extremely narrow view of what truth is. Truth does not just mean natural scientific truth. Truth
Based on whose
also
authority?
entails-
Based on
truth-
whose authority?
Sorry?
Based on whose authority? How do you know that's right?
There's no, I'm not speaking, pretending to anyone's authority right now. We are here debating ultimately with the goal to persuade as many people. Now, I'm going to guess I have more viewers than you. So I guess I'm more authoritative than you.
Is that it?
Wait.
What are you trying to ask?
To be
What are you trying
clear,
to ask?
wait. To be
What are you
clear.
trying to ask?
Oh wait.
There is
So wait,
no
Haas,
unconditional authority at all.
Haas.
There's no unconditional authority.
Okay, let me be clear. When I'm talking, nobody else is talking. Okay, and I said Haas was gonna wrap us up until we go into outros. So Haas, please finish your statement. Then everybody's gonna do outros. If you want to respond to whatever Haas says, do an outro.
So I think I'll just finish it with this. Just to be clear, this is probably the central thesis here. There is no such thing as an unconditional authority of truth. Every single expression of truth in reality is conditional. It's conditional first based on the material premises of the institution, the amount of popular trust in that institution, and so on and so on. It is always conditional and never simply existing in the either unconditional, simply the truth out there. So none of the actual discoveries of modern natural science, like quantum mechanics and so on, none of this would make sense by this old view of truth that you're taking for granted.
Okay, we're gonna do outros now. I'm gonna start with the two people I think I probably should, which is gonna be Fabian, because Fabian wanted to say something. Then I think it's going to be Zan, then Kevin, and then I'll go normal order. Fabian.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell is happening here tonight, but I'm just fucking. I'm an ANCAP agreeing with the Marxist-Leninists here, right? Like the German philosophers, already debunked this idea of like empiricism being like complete and utter truth, right? Like logic is conditional. Now, understanding, from a more conservative mindset, you have individuals like Merton and structural functionalism and functionalism, right? You have to, if you want science to make sense, you have to assume things are true at that moment and then build upon those assumed truths in the future. And that's where bias comes in and that's where things occur. But this idea that truth, right, we can just say everything else that disagrees with the ideological narrative of the institution is somehow misinformation. I mean, you've seen this play out with the beginning of the pandemic and where we are now, right? Like you've seen individuals come out and say, hey, there's a lab leak theory in China. And then a bunch of people saying that's total and utter bullshit. And now the institutions are like, well, maybe the lab leak theory was true, right? We still don't know for any certain, right? There's historical etiologies looked at in the science that assumes that this was probably an accidental lab leak. But I mean, there's also plenty of experts saying that it wasn't. And now this is being challenged, right? So when you say that you have authority on what is and isn't true, what you're really saying is I have a power imbalance because of the popularity of my ideas, and I have the right to exert my power over those individuals that have less power than me, right? I know this is very, critical theory and very Marxist of me, but sometimes, a broken clock is right twice a day, right? This is a perfect example of that, right? And so, and again, talking about this situation with Lauren Southern, I had one of my viewers just looked at Alex Jones, right? He's gone from 3 million to 7 million since March, right? And so when you say like, hey, well, we platform them and then people don't discover him, but then you openly admit that people talk about the censorship and you openly admit that the Streisand effect works, then you understand that the reality of the situation in the world that we live in is that no one lives on a social media echo chamber. What they really live in is a social media echo chamber, plus their friends and family, plus political speeches, plus the news, plus all of these different ideas and things. And that deplatforming Lauren Southern or deplatforming an individual, all you're going to do in summation is you're going to allow them to express their views in such a way that they want, where they control them and they control the backlash within their own community. And conservatives, I think I've shown with moral foundations theory from Jonathan Haidt and personality psychology, are very much into in-group preference, authority structures, and security. And those differences are going to cause those people to coalesce together.
Yep. Next is Zan.
Yeah, I guess my main thesis statement of this whole drama or this whole topic is that I think a lot of people are sort of overblowing the idea of platforming an individual person. I can understand if it's someone like Alex Jones, but As far as Lauren Southern goes, I don't think any harm is really caused by it, realistically speaking. And I don't really take issue with people that do it. I think that if you're going to be a debate figure who does panels and debates people and you're on the left, then yeah, go out there and debate anybody who disagrees with you, right? You're going to find, in someone like Lauren Southern, you'll find a pretty damn good challenging debate. And that's always something you should look for to improve your skills. I don't really have much of an issue with it personally.
Kevin Castley?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So
all right, let me
just
also
quick-
make clear, I didn't say this at the beginning. The last time you can respond to anybody talking about this topic is the intro to the next topic. So let's say somebody responds to you here and you're like, fuck, I can't say anything. You can say something during the intro of the next topic about this topic. Kevin, you can go on.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So I just want to quickly respond to something that Hawes said earlier about how basically making a determination that somebody was acting to spread misinformation, that to shut down an account based on that would be a violation of the First Amendment. I want to be clear, I'm not making an argument for the government. Now, the government can pursue people that are acting as unregistered foreign agents, and that was pursued against Michael Flynn, for example, because he didn't disclose that he was paid $500,000 by the Turkish government, for example, while lobbying Donald Trump. But as far as it relates to individual users on social media platforms, that's up to private companies and their terms of service. That's not under the purview of the First Amendment. That's a private interaction at that point. Using those platforms, you sign up according to their TOS, and so the TOS, or rather the First Amendment, doesn't guarantee you the right to have a Twitter account, for example. It guarantees you the right to not have the government silence your ability to speak. But I do just want to say on the point about platforming Lauren Southern and platforming alt-right or alt-light figures at large, I'm going to stand by saying that you're better off having your ideas, basically when they're engaged with, being there to defend yourself rather than having these figures react to you. Again, if you have a sufficiently large platform, then you are just letting them say what you said and make fun of you and tinge your view completely by their bias for their audience, who then becomes, an echo chamber. And these are pretty big echo chambers too. I mean, we were just talking about 7 million people, as Scott brought up with regards to Alex Jones. It's a pretty big, sizable percentage of people. And so when you look at platforming at large, you're better off being in the room. You're better off being able to challenge people. The only point, and I'll say this, is just have a good dog whistle radar. That's really about it. So thank you.
Okay, next is going to be Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I'm just personally of the camp that this isn't a game for me, right? Like, these ideas involve me not existing for some of these individuals, and that ain't down for me. Now, if you because again, we know how these incentive structures work on Twitch. These individuals have no monetary interest to change their positions. So that just ain't it for me. But granted, I dedicated my space to be not doing that type of shit. But for people who want to sort of gamify this, and politics is a game, and navigating within these spaces is a game, and you want to create a little outrage drama that leads into social currency that gets them into the same room as you, and then you want to as you're challenging this individual and thinking that your chat is really excited and cheering you on and giving you bits and donations and subs, that's what you want to do, then go do that. I can't stop you from doing that. But it just ain't for me. For some of you it is, and good. I just hope that when you're in these spaces that you do challenge these ideas in the way that is sufficient. That's all I ask,
Okay. Now I'm gonna throw it over to Jangles.
Dude, I got whiplash from that one. If we had gone in wanting to talk about truth and misinformation and what constitutes authority and scientific knowledge and stuff, I would have been so ready for that, or I would have been super pumped for that. But okay, maybe next time. So about platforming, and so I do sympathize with Joe here. So yeah, sometimes topics are a game for other people. It's just a nice little intellectual exercise, but sometimes it is your identity. So I'm a gay man. I grew up in a conservative environment. All right, I've had to argue for my own identity for not my entire life, but my entire adult life. All right, so I've had consequences both from losing friends, losing family, and sometimes being the victim of actual violence. I know what the stakes are. I know it's not just a game for a lot of people, but at the same time, like what else, dude? We gotta like fight for our ideas. I think our ideas are good. Like my favorite something I want to make it my catchphrase. I think we can win even when our opponents show up. All right, that's something I truly believe. I think our ideas are better. I think we're smarter than them. I think we're better at rhetoric than them. I think we're hotter than them. And all we have to do is show up, study our shit, and we will win. We can like win in this battle of ideas. Of course, it's a way more complicated than that, but so what? We can figure it out. And I'll just go ahead and say it. I fucking destroyed Lauren Southern. I won't pussyfoot around here. I destroyed Lauren Southern. The reason I did is because I knew the topic front, back, and sideways. I am an expert in that topic. Nothing else, but that topic I picked. I was something that I was an expert in. I've also had a few debates under my belt, so I knew like how to ask questions. I knew how to engage in rhetoric. So yeah, we can win when they show up. All right, don't be scared of Lauren Southern. If you don't want to deal with her, don't. I wouldn't force that upon anyone, but don't get mad when other people do it. Right? At the end of the day, it's just Twitch politics. Come on. Like it has an impact, but it's not going to be world changing. The best debate in the world on Twitch is not going to be world changing, at least not immediately.
Oz?
Didn't I already do the outro?
Oh, sorry. Got confused. Throwing it over to Connor.
Yeah, so I've been kicking this around in my head. Little shout out to my friend Tiberius D, because his cynicism pushed me to this political theory. He was wondering and asking me, like, hey, how much of this percentage is like actual battle of ideas? How much of this is actual philosophy, actual politics, actual this, actual that? And my optimistic guess is maybe 20%. I think 80% of the Twitch.tv politics debate scene is cult of personality, force of personality, rhetoric, and flair. And that sucks. But if you look at our politics, that's also true. Think about all the people that we talk about, even within our electoral scene: Mitch McConnell, AOC, Dianne Feinstein, all these like little unique personalities that, while they have electoral impact, they become villains with their own cult of personality. Donald Trump being another person, and they've essentially weaponized the attention of the public in order to forward their ideas and their agenda. The reason why I bring this up is because I think it's okay and it's good to have the philosophical battle of ideas. And as a matter of fact, that's part of what I try to do. I try to bring some level of substance to the things that I say. But what I would also say is that you need to be willing to, you can't just, as we were talking about earlier, you can't just debate. You also have to argue. You have to have a rhetorical flourish. You have to have talent. You have to have a skill. The reason why I know about Haas before I've ever fucking seen him is because he has this beautiful rant about the Mongolians that's like 90 seconds long. That's one of the most like intense fucking rants I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. And that's because he has charisma and polish and flourish and all that kind of shit, kind of in a brutal fucking way. But if you can follow that up with that some level of substance, that makes you a contender. So what I would say is, let's not run away from hard fights. Let's not run away from hard conversations. Let's not pretend that we're above rhetoric or flair or cults of personality. Let's have these fights, know what they are, and basically kick ass and take names. That would be my advice. So I'll leave it there.
Okay. We're now going to throw it over to Demon Machine to wrap this topic up.
Yay! So there's several things that I kind of wanted to touch on real quick. One, there is a big question that I do have to bring up, which is when Superpower Broadcasting was talking, I forgot your name suddenly, was talking about private companies can dictate whatever is on their platforms and things. At what point do we consider that these platforms have gotten so large and they've encompassed so much of the American populace in and of itself that it is now the town square? And when do we consider that is something that you cannot be removed from, that you can't just be shut out of the internet and communicate with all these people? So that was point one. The other thing that worries me is if we deplatform people, then of course, like Fabian and Haas and even CounterPoints was talking about that way, is that they're going to take their audience with them. And the other thing is, if they're very loyal to their content creator, whoever, whether it be Alex Jones or something like that, they're not going to be in the same space as us on Twitch, and they're not going to co-pollinate. They're not going to bother to go look at anybody reacting to Alex Jones stuff, because they're only going to go to Infowars.com. That's their main source of news, and they're not going to get it from anywhere else if they don't want to, or if they're not somehow forced to, or accidentally doing it, kind of thing. And damn, there was one last thing that I wanted to talk about, and I forgot what it was. Oh well, maybe I'll think of it before the intro of the next one. But yeah, I just worry that when you start dictating what is truth, and you start telling people that this is decidedly wrong because our institutions say it, and half the people don't believe the institutions, then you're fighting an uphill battle, and you're never going to get anyone to change their mind.
Okay.